I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
Glorious purpose.
Glorious purpose then.
This, along with the narrative driving it forward, is a fairly grand and existential concept, especially when considering the humble beginnings which kickstarted the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when I say humble, I of course mean the billionaire who was kidnapped and trapped in a cave as a part of an elaborate scheme to take over his tech and company. So, definitions vary, but the concept hasn't really changed since the first few origin movies led us to an assemblage of Avengers, which kickstarted a series of events that leads us to the series we're here to discuss today. Heroes, rogues, and scoundrels alike have been discovering and reimagining their glorious purpose throughout the franchise, up to and including the billionaire who got this party started, and 2 snaps later, along with a noble sacrifice, the world is back to normal. The primary difference and focus of Marvel's Loki is the issue of scale and perspective. Loki as a character seeks the thrill of manipulating, deceiving, and controlling those around him. The reason why is mostly inconsequential to this discussion. I'm not here to explore Loki's troubled past or psychoanalyze the character. I'm here to look beyond the individual and focus more specifically on what it means to be an individual in the world of a series where that is the most important question one could ask. Now, in the spirit of a series about time travel, we'll start our discussion in the middle of the saga. Or at least near to it. Episode 3, A Tale of Two Lokis. Or, more accurately, Loki and...
I'm Sylvie now.
It's interesting to see the duality between these two characters who are supposed to be two divergent possibilities of the same person. Mischievous, duplicitous, beguiling, prideful. And on the flip side, brusque, ingenious, cunning, insightful. But how many of those things apply to both of them in different measures? How many other ways could each of them be described? Two sides of the same coin. But where those threads merge, we see a shared understanding of things. The same struggles, desires, insecurities. The core of the same individual is still there. But in spite of this, Sylvie chooses not to identify as who she once was, but as something unique, more in line with what her desires are now. Now the question is, does this make Sylvie any less of an individual than the Loki we know and love? According to the TVA, that question is irrelevant on its face. In their view, the ordering of the sacred timeline is sacrosanct. Everything is structured and empirically designed and catalogued according to a specific master plan. Any action, idea, or goal which lies outside of this ordering is an aberration. Because, as we all know,
Existence is chaos. Nothing makes any sense, so we try to make some sense of it. And I'm just lucky that the chaos I emerged into gave me all this. My own glorious purpose. Because the TVA is my life. And it's real because I believe it's real.
which was a lie, so yeah. And in a sense, it's analogous to the real world. An organization, a governing body, a punitive and disciplinary force. The story that is usually told of such entities trying to maintain order, discipline, safety, traditions, is so often the fabrication of a machine built only for profit and control. And just like in the real world, the individual actors are corrupted into thinking that what they're doing is right, not realizing that they themselves are prisoners, and their beliefs the warden. In this case, helped by some memory wipes. The TVA. Clean, orderly, and efficient. The thing I find most interesting about the Time Variance Authority is the contrast in B15's outlook and behavior before and after she is enchanted by Sylvie. The almost callous and cruel satisfaction of executing the task she's assigned, versus her remembering a time in the distant past when she was genuinely happy. I'd say this is an even starker contrast to how both Mobius and Renslayer reacted upon finding out the truth, since for both of them, one could already see motes of individual expression, though in diverging directions. Both of them formed a strong personal ethos in line with the TVA's beliefs, in which their dogma further fueled the narrative, building further prison walls for everyone, themselves included, though the divergent paths they took would always inevitably lead them in opposite directions, but more on that later. In the TVA, individuality is reduced to ordered figures and statistics. Everything and everyone is nothing more than a preordained set of data in folders, ledgers, and libraries. It needs this grand, unified goal, executed by beings whose only knowledge is that the work must be done. Loyal warriors willing to do anything for what they perceive to be a glorious purpose above all others. The TVA needs this, because if ever a sliver of possibility exists outside of the narrative, well, chaos will ensue. This chaos, mind you, is no grand revolutionary fire. It is simple knowledge and understanding. Order exists through controlling the narrative, manipulating everything, even themselves, in an effort to fulfill a single purpose. A purpose which requires the death of individuality for someone else's glorious purpose, and everything is a necessary sacrifice in order for someone else to achieve their solipsistic aims. That last part not only applies to the politics, social structures, and ethics of our world, but also to the TVA. In that way, the simple memory that Hunter C10 had of sitting in a restaurant, sipping on cocktails, and enjoying the company of a loved one is a greater threat to the TVA than any Loki variant. The Lokis are simply, and not so simply, the lens and mirror through which we explore a wider narrative. If you listen closely, you might hear the sounds of crickets and whistling frogs in the background. I live in a tropical region. The house is surrounded by vegetation and it's the dead of night here. I've often found that being up during these late hours brings to mind certain questions of an existential nature. Am I living up to my truest purpose? My fullest potential? Who am I as a person? Divorced from all those things that distract me from that question. Such questions often flit through my mind, but it's not often that they're thrust upon me. It's not often that I have to come face to face with who I am as a person, with what it truly means to be me. So it's strange and ironic for a person to be truly alone with themselves, isolated from everything, yet have more companionship and camaraderie, potentially speaking, than they've ever had before. Living in what amounts to a time graveyard and having to contend with the worst of what you are embodied in another person has to be a horrible reality. The arrogance and cunning that every Loki prides themselves on is shown to be their ultimate downfall. Living in a never-ending hell of constantly backstabbing themselves, each Loki showing a unique variation of what ultimately leads them all to their own doom. Reflections and mirrors of one another, especially three in particular. We've already discussed Sylvie's single-minded drive and determination, how she literally chose to be someone else in order to take hold of her destiny. As a result of this, even though you can see certain familiar traits leaking through, she is the least Loki-like of all the variants. This is both a strength and a weakness, because she is able to see variables and angles the others can't, yet her single-mindedness sometimes prevents her from seeing broader perspectives. In the end, She cannot imagine a world where the consequences of her choices are beyond her control. Our Loki is perhaps the most able to adapt and learn, but he is also the one most tethered to their emotions and instincts. For all that we've seen of Loki, his desires have always led him in circles, never truly achieving anything, always seeking something he just cannot quite find. At the same time, and in direct contrast to Sylvie, he is able to find his way into favorable positions, even though he doesn't know what he's looking for. All he knows is what he's running away from. Sylvie and our Loki offer each other and all the other variants a unique level of understanding and self-aware introspection, a stark reality of not only who they are, but who they could be, the full potential they could live up to. And in that regard, Richard E. Grant's Loki represents a Loki with the greatest understanding of that concept. A Loki who has grown weary and tired of the never-ending search for identity, who came to accept the part he assumed he was meant to play. Yet, he was able to see parts of himself he had never truly understood, reflected in two variants of himself who were willing to sacrifice everything for their goal, for a purpose greater than themselves. And with Loki's death in Infinity War, juxtaposed against classic Loki's death, the difference is that Loki's end at the hands of Thanos was an inglorious one, inevitable and filled with regret, a tragic end where he was gone just after realizing his purpose. With classic Loki, on the other hand, all that was left for him was the endless eternity at the end of time. A hollow and empty world, yes, but one he had become familiar and comfortable with. The moments just before and after classic Loki's death are where these three characters truly become not who they were meant to be, but who they chose to be. And in the end, these reflections echo beyond the Lokis themselves. Because as we mentioned before, both Renslayer and Mobius have been shaped and affected by this saga in vastly different ways. The Lokis represent an element of chaos which cuts through the facade the TVA represents. Mobius, who is always drawn to the chaos present in the Lokis, seeks to lay everything bare. Renslayer, who was already peeking behind the curtain, seeks to reinforce the order she always knew in a desperate attempt to rationalize her worldview. But all of this is guided ultimately by a single individual, someone who probably understands the concept of individuality better than anyone else, and whose individuality is hardest to understand. Because Kang is a character whose personal ethos, goals, and outlook are on an unfathomable scale. And it is this which creates the greatest juxtaposition of all. Because no matter how much Loki's existence acts as a lens through which we see everyone's identity manifest and change and grow, it means nothing to the man who knows everything. The one who can see all angles, knows all possibilities, understands the full scope of what he is, every possible expression of who they could be, that person is trapped. More than the Lokis who find it so hard to see beyond their own fearful hubris. More than the TVA, bound and constrained within layers of carefully crafted structure. In the end, Renslayer's last words to Mobius are paradoxical. The freedom she seeks is itself a shackle. But isn't that what true freedom and individuality is? Trying to escape being bound to one particular fate inevitably binds you to another. The truest expression of individuality is coming to understand and accept what it means. It might be a little cliche, but the journey is more important than the destination. And what does this all mean for everyone in this series? Well, we'll have to wait and see where this journey takes us in the future. So, we've come to the end. Or is it really the end? Because time is subjective and looks back on itself and branches out, and apparently I've been watching too much Loki, I guess. In any case, thanks for watching. I had fun making this video, and I hope you had fun watching it as well. And stay tuned for more videos coming out in the future. and apparently chickens disturbed my video now in the wee hours of the morning. In any case though, I'm planning to pump out a lot more videos over the next few months, and I'm hoping to open either a Patreon or a Ko-fi so that, you know, people who want to can support my videos. Other avenues might be available as well, but we'll see in time. You know, things are coming down the pipeline. In any case, until next time, and for all time, I'll see you later. The truest expression of individuality is having